It was bold, it was hilarious, and it was making serious money. So why did Two Broke Girls suddenly disappear in 2017, without even a proper ending? Behind the laughs, there were controversies that wouldn't go away, rising costs no one could ignore, and quiet tensions building behind the scenes. Now, years later, the real reason is finally clear, and it's a lot bigger than anyone expected. Two Broke Girls was hated by many TV critics. When Two Broke Girls first premiered in CBS's 2011 fall lineup, the reaction from critics was anything but unanimous. Some saw potential, but many felt the show wasn't living up to it. The Hollywood Reporter called it one of the most disappointing new sitcoms of the season, arguing that whatever promise it had was quickly buried under cheap, predictable jokes. Others were even harsher. Vulture questioned the tone of the humor, wondering why it had to feel so mean, while Slate offered a more forgiving take, describing it as watchable but only good for a quick, light laugh. As the season went on, the criticism only grew louder. During a 2012 Television Critics Association press event, reporters openly challenged the cast and producers, pointing to repetitive side characters, outdated stereotypes, and the show's heavy reliance on sexual humor. In later seasons, reviews became even more direct. By 2015, critics at Pop Matters felt the show had lost its spark and was heading toward creative burnout. A year later, the Boston Globe went as far as asking whether it had become the worst sitcom on television, highlighting just how far the show's reputation had shifted over time. It was accused of perpetuating racist stereotypes. Two Broke Girls featured a colorful group of supporting characters, especially those working in the diner, but not all of them landed well with audiences. Some viewers felt certain portrayals crossed the line, with critics pointing out that the humor sometimes leaned too heavily on stereotypes. The New Yorker even described the character dynamics as so exaggerated that they were more confusing than simply offensive. Much of the criticism focused on Han Lee, the diner's owner, played by Matthew Moy. A review from The Guardian noted that the character was often mocked for his accent, his personality, and his struggles to fit into American culture. Moy, however, defended the role, explaining in an interview that the show's humor was never meant to be cruel, but instead came from a place of affection. He acknowledged the concerns, but also pointed out that he had faced similar teasing throughout his life and didn't see the character as harmful. Co-star Beth Bears also addressed the backlash, taking a more straightforward stance. She noted that in comedy, criticism is inevitable, and no matter what a show does, there will always be people who take issue with it. Two Broke Girls was criticized for its filthiness. Two Broke Girls didn't just face criticism for its characters. It also drew attention for its style of humor. While some viewers appreciated its bold, edgy tone, others felt the jokes often went too far, especially for a prime-time network sitcom. The show's heavy use of sexual innuendo made it stand out, but not always in a way critics approved of. For many, it simply didn't fit the expectations of a typical family hour show. By 2017, The Washington Post went as far as calling it one of the most provocative comedies on network television, pointing to its constant stream of suggestive humor. That reputation also sparked backlash from viewers. Over the years, dozens of formal complaints were filed with the FCC, with some audiences arguing that the show relied too much on explicit language and pushed beyond what they considered acceptable for mainstream TV. Despite the criticism, the controversy became part of the show's identity, one of the very things that kept it talked about, even as it divided audiences. Two Broke Girls wasn't the anchor show CBS hoped it would be. In the end, Two Broke Girls simply didn't meet the expectations CBS had set for it. During the 2013 to 2014 season, the network made a major scheduling shift, expanding its successful comedy lineup and trying to build a stronger Thursday block. As part of that plan, 2.5 Men was moved to Thursdays, while Two Broke Girls was expected to step up as the main anchor on Monday nights. CBS also introduced a new sitcom, We Are Men, placing it between How I Met Your Mother and Two Broke Girls, hoping it would draw in viewers and boost the lineup. But the strategy didn't work. We Are Men failed to gain traction and was quickly pulled from the schedule. With that plan falling apart, CBS reshuffled everything. Two Broke Girls was moved to an earlier time slot, while Mike and Molly, starring Melissa McCarthy, was brought back sooner than expected to take over as the network's new 9 p.m. anchor. In the end, as industry observers noted, Two Broke Girls just wasn't strong enough to carry the weight CBS had placed on it. Two Broke Girls ratings were dropping. When Two Broke Girls wrapped up its 6th season, there was little reason to believe it wouldn't return. On paper, the numbers still looked solid. The show averaged a 1.3 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic, with around 5.6 million viewers per episode, figures comparable to other CBS comedies that were renewed at the time, like Man with a Plan and Life in Pieces. But a closer look told a different story. The audience was quietly slipping. When Season 6 premiered in October 2016, it pulled in a strong 1.7 rating with over 6.3 million viewers. By the time the finale aired in April 2017, that number had dropped significantly, down to a 1.04 rating and just over 4.5 million viewers. While ratings weren't the only factor behind the show's cancellation, losing nearly 2 million viewers over a single season was a clear warning sign, and one that networks rarely ignore. A racially tinged joke angered Australia's former Prime Minister. Throughout its 6-season run, Two Broke Girls was no stranger to controversy. But one moment in 2015 sparked backlash far beyond the United States. In a particular episode, a line delivered by Han, played by Matthew Moy, drew immediate criticism. The joke referenced a woman in Australia and included a remark about Aboriginal heritage that many viewers found offensive. What might have been intended as edgy humor quickly crossed a line for international audiences, especially in Australia, where the reaction was swift and intense. According to reports from BBC News, viewers took to social media to express their outrage. Many accused the show of disrespecting Indigenous Australians, with some calling the joke deeply offensive and questioning how it made it into a mainstream sitcom. The criticism wasn't limited to everyday viewers either. Even Kevin Rudd publicly condemned the show, describing the joke as a pathetic attempt at racist humor and calling for an apology. The incident highlighted a growing issue for the series, what some saw as boundary-pushing comedy, others viewed as outdated and insensitive, and moments like this only added to the mounting criticism that followed the show throughout its run. Intense negotiations over Two Broke Girls led to its cancellation. Behind the scenes, Two Broke Girls was caught in a quiet but intense battle that most fans never saw. While the show was still on the air, CBS, the network that broadcast it, and Warner Brothers Television, the studio that produced it, were locked in difficult negotiations over its future. The tension largely came down to money. From Warner Brothers' perspective, the show was a major success. As early as 2012, it had secured a massive syndication deal with TBS worth a reported $1.7 million per episode, an enormous figure that made the series incredibly valuable in reruns. But CBS had a problem. It didn't own the show. That meant the network didn't benefit from those lucrative syndication profits, even as it continued to air the series. As negotiations dragged on in early 2017, it became clear that this financial imbalance was creating friction. Not long after, CBS made the decision to cancel the show, despite its still decent ratings. While no single reason was officially blamed, the timing suggested that the business side of television played a major role in the outcome. The news came as a shock to those closest to the show. Showrunner Michelle Nader admitted she was caught off guard and made it clear she wasn't ready to let go. She expressed hope that the story could continue elsewhere, insisting that both the creators and the audience still had more they wanted to see. The ownership of Two Broke Girls sealed its fate. At the heart of Two Broke Girls' cancellation was a major issue that had nothing to do with the cast, the writing, or even the ratings. It was ownership. The series was produced by Warner Brothers Television and simply licensed to CBS. That meant CBS made its money the traditional way, through advertising during primetime broadcasts. But once the show became a hit, the real money came from somewhere else entirely. When Two Broke Girls landed a massive syndication deal, reportedly worth $1.7 million per episode, those back-end profits went straight to Warner Brothers, not CBS. For the network, that created a frustrating imbalance. CBS had helped build the show's audience and success, but wasn't sharing in its most lucrative revenue stream. And in an industry where long-term profits matter just as much, if not more, than ratings, that kind of setup was far from ideal. According to industry reports, this situation played a significant role in CBS's decision to cancel the show. It also reflected a bigger shift happening across television at the time. Networks were increasingly focused on producing and owning their own content, ensuring they could benefit from syndication and future deals. In fact, for the 2017 to 2018 season, most of CBS's new shows were either fully or partially owned by the network itself. Had Two Broke Girls been produced in-house, its story might have turned out very differently. Instead, despite solid performance and a loyal fan base, the business side of television ultimately sealed its fate. CBS offered a creative explanation when asked why Two Broke Girls was canceled. Of course, Two Broke Girls didn't just face criticism over its humor or behind-the-scenes business tensions. There was also a creative argument for why the show came to an end. In 2017, CBS scheduling chief Kelly Kale offered a different perspective in an interview, suggesting that the decision wasn't purely about money or ownership. Instead, he framed it as a matter of creative timing. According to Kale, the network felt the show had simply reached its natural endpoint after 6 seasons. He pointed out that CBS was developing a strong slate of new comedies at the time, and that success created pressure on long-running shows. In a competitive schedule, something had to give. Kyle explained that when new projects show real promise, networks are often forced to make tough calls, clearing space to bring in fresh content, even if existing shows are still performing reasonably well. When asked directly about the widely reported ownership issues between CBS and Warner Brothers Television, Kyle downplayed their significance. He insisted the cancellation was driven more by creative direction than financial disputes, describing it overall as a business decision. Still, when you look at the full picture, ratings trends, ownership complications, and a push for new programming, it becomes clear that Two Broke Girls didn't end for just one reason. Kat Dennings wanted to give fans a better conclusion. The cancellation of Two Broke Girls didn't just catch fans off guard, it blindsided the cast as well. After 6 seasons of building the story of Max and Caroline, played by Kat Dennings and Beth Behrs, everyone involved had expected the show to continue. In fact, the season 6 finale was written with the assumption that another season was coming, which meant it never truly functioned as a proper ending. As a result, the series closed without resolving some of its biggest storylines. One of the most anticipated moments, Max's wedding, never made it to the screen. Speaking after the cancellation, Dennings revealed that even behind the scenes, there had been strong expectations for a season 7. She shared that co-creator Michael Patrick King had spoken as if the show would return, making the abrupt ending even more jarring. Dennings expressed disappointment not just for herself, but for the audience who had followed the characters for years. She even floated the idea of someday revisiting the story through a 2-hour special, giving fans the closure they never received. Years later, in a 2025 interview, she made it clear that she would still be open to stepping back into Max's shoes if the opportunity ever came. Behrs has echoed that same sentiment. While working on other projects, she admitted that it still felt strange that Two Broke Girls never got a true goodbye. For both actresses, the lack of a proper ending remains unfinished business. Even now, the possibility of a reunion continues to linger. The cast may have moved on, and time may have changed things. But for longtime viewers, the story of Max and Caroline still feels incomplete, waiting for one final chapter that never came. In the end, the story behind Two Broke Girls proves that cancellations aren't always about just one thing. They're about timing, business, and decisions made far beyond what viewers ever see. But even years later, the unanswered questions and unfinished storylines still linger. So what do you think? Did Two Broke Girls deserve one more season or at least a proper finale to wrap everything up? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy uncovering the real stories behind your favorite shows, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives like this.